Hey guys, today I'm sharing with you a couple of rainbow cards that I made using two new products that were just released by Lawn Fawn. I'll be using the fancy lattice backdrop and the layered butterflies die. Okay, so for the first card, I'm going to be using my Distress inks. And I'm picking out the colors that I want to create with. I've picked raspberry, spun sugar, evergreen bow, and peacock feathers. So I've got my watercolor cardstock there on my work surface, and I'm taking the picked raspberry first, and then I'm just gonna add it to the top left corner of my panel, and I'm kind of going in a diagonal scheme. And for this card, I really want a bright background, so I'm going in pretty heavy-handed. And then I tried to do the spun sugar, and that just took quite an effort to do. So I'll come back to that in a minute. Then I go in with my darkest green, which is that Mermaid Lagoon. Or I'm sorry, Peacock feathers. And I'm going in pretty heavy-handed on this other corner, and I'm adding that in. And then I'll blend that out with Evergreen Bow. And it took some effort to kind of go from get a smooth transition between those two colors. But I think my advantage was that I used watercolor cardstock, and that really helped a ton. So then back to the spun sugar, which was going to take forever and a day to ink blend that with that tool. I just decided to swipe it across my cardstock and then use the ink blending tool to blend that out and kind of minimize any of those harsh lines. And then I can clean off my tool and kind of blend in between any harsh lines that I've got left. And I'm adding a little more picked raspberry. I feel like it kind of lost its place. And so I've set that one off to the side to dry, and I'm going to work on the second panel. For this one, I'm using the Oxides, and that is a piece of Bristol smooth cardstock that I've got under there, and I'm just adding color in stripes this time. Again, I'm going in pretty heavy-handed, and I'm swiping the color across, and then I'll use my ink blending tool to blend out any harsh lines. So the first one that I added was picked raspberry, and then I've added carved pumpkin, and then I move on. Oh, I clean off my mat so that I don't get any kind of cross contamination, because the next color that I'm going to use is Squeezed Lemonade. And then I'll add that in, and I'm really going in heavy-handed for these. I've really wanted a lot of boldness to this panel. And then I'm going in with Twisted Citron, and then I'll just kind of go back and forth between the colors where I get a little larger stripe of color of one color. I'll go in with the other color to sort of even it out, and then blend out any harsh lines, and just back and forth till it looks good to me. And then finally I add Mermaid Lagoon to this one. And then I'll add a little more Twisted Citron, and I'll get a really nice shade of green when I combine those two. And then again, I'll set that one off to air dry. So to kind of work on my focal point images, I've got my Fine-Tech pearlescent watercolors, and I'm only using the two last silver colors on the end there. One is silver and one is like a warm silver, like a champagne silver, I think it's called. I've got a piece of watercolor cardstock there, and I'm just dabbing on that color enough to cover what I want to die cut. So once I have added enough of the color to my background, I will heat that or dry that with my heating tool, and then I can do my die cutting. So with this fancy lattice backdrop, I'm cutting that down with a piece of black cardstock, and then I use my Spellbinders tool-in-one to pop out all those little tiny pieces, and I had absolutely no trouble with that. I've also die cut the second rainbow panel that I've made with the lattice backdrop, and I did the same thing, just popped out all those images, and it worked out just fine. While I was die cutting, I did die cut the butterflies from black cardstock, and then I also die cut that watercolor panel that I did with those pearlescent colors. And then in the layered butterfly set, there's also like an outline of each of the sizes of butterflies, and I die cut that with just some vellum. The only trouble I seem to have had with my die cutting of those butterflies was right at the antennas. It just didn't cut all the way through. But I took my knife and then I'm just cutting that right out, and it was fine. So here's what that looks like, and I can use again my Spellbinders tool-in-one to pop out all those little tiny pieces. Okay, so here's what that looks like. And I'm just going to kind of start arranging my components together onto the backgrounds. I still have not adhered anything down yet, so I'm just kind of working on arranging first and trying different butterflies with the different backgrounds. And then for that second panel, I really felt like the butterflies were getting lost. There wasn't enough contrast between the background and the butterflies. So what I decided to do was from the pearlescent butterflies that I die cut, I decided to take all those little pieces and pop them into the outline of the black butterfly. So the easiest way to do that for me was to use my little Xyron sticker maker and add adhesive to the vellum outline, and then I took the butterfly die cut, the black one, and then just like a jigsaw puzzle, I can pop all those pieces right back into place. And because there's adhesive on the entire background, I don't have to mess with any other adhesive to get those back into place. Okay, so now I'm ready to start adhering everything together, and I'll be honest, I had quite a lot of trouble getting all these adhered. I just didn't didn't find a good way to do this. For this first one, I thought I'd use the multimedia mat with a paintbrush and just swipe that adhesive on the lattice backdrop. But there was some drawbacks to that, and there was the adhesive oozed in some of the places, and even though it dries clear, there was still some splotchiness to some portions of that background. So I tried that with this first panel. And then since I had that multimedia mat out, I decided to go ahead and adhere the butterflies. And mostly it worked fine. There was some oozing of the adhesive from that die cut, but it worked out fine. And then I thought I'd use my liquid adhesive. This is the Lawn Fawn liquid glue. And again, there was some drawback to that, specifically that some of the adhesive just oozed out. The only one I haven't tried was like spray adhesive, and I just didn't have any available to me at that moment, but I think I'm gonna give that a try before I do anything like this again. So this is the rainbow background that I die cut, and I'm adhering that to the black cardstock. And the other panel, I adhered the black die cut to the rainbow cardstock. So here's kind of what it's all going to look like, and I'm going to start adhering now all of those components. I did create a sentiment stamp from that set, and I've white heat embossed it onto a strip of black cardstock. Here I'm just adhering that panel to a white card base. And then just trim off a little bit that's overhanging from that card base that I made. And then I can start adhering my other components. And I'm just taking the sentiment strips and I trim those down using my scissors. And then I'll use some fun foam to pop those up. And that is the only dimension that I add to the cards. Everything else is adhered flat, and I don't think I was missing any dimension. And then again, I'll just use some liquid glue and add those butterflies into place. And then once I have those in place, I can add the sentiment down. And that first card is done. The second card, I do use the liquid adhesive to add the butterflies down, and I do pop up that sentiment. But somehow I felt like that sentiment strip was getting a little bit lost in that background, and I didn't really want to cover up the butterflies with it. So here I'm just using it's a quickie glue pen to adhere those butterflies down, and I think this worked out a little bit better because it's such a tiny tip, and I'm basically just tracing the outline of that butterfly. So back to the sentiment, I decide that since the black sentiment strip was kind of getting lost against that black background die cut, what I decided to do was to take a piece of vellum and adhere that sentiment strip down. And then I can just cut that down using my scissors, and then pop up the entire sentiment piece. And just that little bit of the vellum kind of gave that sentiment strip just a little difference. So there are my rainbow cards all finished up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think and which is your favorite. I do want to mention that these cards were made to celebrate National Craft Month, and over on my Instagram I am joining a 2-week Spring Fling Instagram hop, so check that out. All my social media is listed down below, and I will have a link right in my video description bar for that. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and I'll see you next time.